Did you know India has over 2,500 infertility treatment clinics or IVF clinics as they are known? In fact, we are on an average adding one such new clinic every week. I'm sure we all have seen these clinics mushrooming in our neighborhoods. But have you wondered why?
India is probably the fastest growing IVF market in the world. And the reason that IVF is flourishing today within India is directly related to success rates and accessibility. I think that India is on the precipice of becoming the global experts and the global leaders in vitro fertilization.
That's Dr. Brian Levine, New York-based global fertility expert. India has now toppled China as the most populous country in the world. It has a fertility rate of over 2 births per woman. But India, being the land of contrast that it is also on track to emerge as the fertility treatment capital of the world. A 2019 study conducted by All India Institute of Medical Sciences estimated that over 12 to 18 million couples in India are diagnosed with infertility every year. So what's causing this? Lifestyle changes and late marriages among women and lower sperm count among men are the leading causes. Sensing a business opportunity in catering to this rising healthcare issue, private equity players have been investing in this sector for over a decade now. In fact, India's top 3 IVF clinic chains are majority owned by global equity players like TIA Associates, TPG, GIC, and World Invest. Fueled by such investment, the Indian fertility market is expected to reach around $3 billion by 2030. That's over 3 times its current size. In fact, India's largest fertility clinic chain, Indira IVF, is currently valued at over 13,000 crore rupees.
India's largest fertility clinic chain, Indira IVF, has reported an impressive performance, clocking in an annual revenue of 1,250 crore rupees, having performed over 40,000 IVF procedures in FY23.
The likes of TPG-backed Nova IVF bought 51% stake in Delhi-based IVF chain Southend Fertility, while the likes of Behring, Blackstone, Bain and Advent and TPG are looking to acquire majority stake in Indira IVF with the deal size anywhere between 8 to 10,000 crores.
Now, to regulate this multi-million-dollar industry, India passed the Assisted Reproduction Technology and Surrogacy Act in 2021. This law, also known as ART Act in short, has made the segment more attractive for investors. In today's episode, we trace the growth of the fertility industry boom in India, the logistics of making babies, the impact of the new ART law, the rising investor interest, and the next big trend that will drive growth of this industry in India. I speak to several stakeholders representing the domestic industry, the regulator, the patients, and the global fertility treatment market. It is Thursday, 15th of June. I'm Kiran Somvanshi from The Economic Times. And you are listening to The Billion Dollar Baby, the booming business of IVF, only on the Morning Brief. So let's get down to some basics first. Medically, infertility is defined as a failure to become pregnant after a year or more of regular unprotected sexual intercourse. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 6 people, or approximately 17.5% of the adult population globally, is affected by infertility. And this is similar across high, middle, and low-income countries. While all this paints a promising picture for the IVF industry in India, it wasn't like this to begin with. Industry veteran Vinesh Gadhia, who is CEO of 49, India's third largest fertility clinic chain, retraces the 3 decades-old journey of the industry.
This is my 30th year in the industry. I am being in this industry since the time when it was very hard to go and educate even gynecologists that infertility is a medical disease and it should be treated. It should not be left to the patient. Most patients, largely women, believe that it's my destiny that I'm infertile, and this I'm talking about early 90s. Or they will go to temple, mosque, gurudwara. So initially, the first 10 years, the struggle was to convince doctors, educate them that there is a treatment available and you should educate patient to be treated. I used to work with Serum Institute, and it was one of the first pioneer company in India to import fertility hormones from a Swiss company. When we used to go and promote our products to doctor, like they used to tell us, "See, forget about MBBS. In our MD Gynec, in our last year, we don't have even chapter on infertility." So we used to run lots of education program and training programs. And then this IVF business, it just took first baby steps in late 90s. And then in the decade of 2000 to 2010, it started really growing. So the first 500 clinics came during that decade largely.
Was there any trigger?
In 2005, WHO classified infertility as medical disease, and lots of programs started globally also. In 2010, when I crossed the bridge from pharma side on educating and training doctors and helping them to start IVF clinic, I was one of the founding member of India's first organized chain of IVF clinic. When this market from single doctor-owned clinics started being organized, when I mean organized is that it is backed by financial institute. It's the time when company like Nova, and because of success of Nova, many IVF chains came in existence in India, including Indira. Indira came after Nova. Then these companies started actually investing dollars in marketing / creating awareness / creating education programs.
And this accelerated the growth of the industry.
Now we are number 2 market in the world.
Okay.
We have 2,500 plus clinics. We do 250,000 plus cycles. We add one new clinic every week. It's growing that fast. The growth rate what we have, in next 2-3 years, India will become fertility treatment capital in the world. But the interesting thing is, we are just scratching the surface. This is just taking off.
And what makes you believe that?
We have more than 50 million infertile couples in India. Second, we have one of the highest urge of parenthood in the world. And most importantly, ever-changing lifestyle. Now, while we copy Western lifestyle, we don't understand that our genes don't change. There is a published study that an Indian woman peaks fertility potential at the age of 25, whereas a Caucasian woman peaks fertility potential at the age of 31. So we cross our peak fertility potential even before we marry. So nowadays, current generation, whether it is urban India or at least even tier 2 city, most people will marry at 27, 28. In urban India, almost near to 30. After that, there are lifestyle choices, there are career choices. They want to settle in relationship. The current generation is not very sure after marriage also. But this brings very high burden of infertility. And when I'm saying this, in 10 years, what has improved? Affordability has improved, acceptance has improved, education has improved, awareness has improved, access to fertility treatment is improved. Also, ART regulation, which was pending from last 10 years, has come into force from July 2022. This has increased consumer confidence. This has also increased investors' confidence. If you put all these things, there is a lot more potential which will come in now. So next 10 years look very, very robust. We will keep growing between 15 to 20% CAGR. This Indira's investment at $1 billion is just a start. I used to say this 10 years before to many people in global market that you just wait, our time will come.
Fertility expert Dr. Brian Levine, who is the founding partner and practice director at CCRM New York, echoes this bullishness on India.
I absolutely agree. I think that India is on the precipice of becoming the global experts and the global leaders in in vitro fertilization. The reason that we're going to see such a flourishing of IVF in India is because geographically it's located very close to the Middle East and to the rest of Asia. And I think India will become a destination for people to go to for excellent treatment. We also know that as clinics continue to be built and there continues to be infusion of capital, Western countries, India is making a meaningful measure in building standards for the levels and the care that need to be provided to patients. All that's going to do is raise the bar and elevate the levels that are anticipated for the outcomes of those clinics. So what excites me the most is access. It excites me that people are building clinics and they're flourishing. But what frustrates me is that the tools that are at my disposal today within the United States, within Canada, and also within some European countries are not fully accessible globally.
So there is huge global investor interest we have seen in the IVF industry in India in the recent years. But do you see cost increasing for the patients in India because of that?
The global interest and investments in IVF in India are not going to increase cost. They're actually going to decrease cost. And more importantly is they're going to both increase the quality of IVF being offered because clinics are going to want to be able to be market value, and they're going to increase access. As we look at the Western infusions of capital that are happening today into many of the emerging markets and many of the established IVF markets, we do see one trend that's happening, which is consolidation. Consolidation of clinics across the board are happening in the United States, in Canada, and in Europe. At first, many were afraid that consolidation will mean price fixing and that it'll become unapproachable or inaccessible for those who truly need the service. But in fact, we're seeing the antithesis happening today. What we're actually seeing is that consolidation of clinics and infusion of capital from both private equity and other capital markets are leading to better outcomes, cheaper services, and more importantly, is more access. Anytime you introduce a new technology, there's always going to be setup costs. However, you're able to amortize those costs by increasing the volume. What we're seeing today about the cost of services in India is that IVF still is expensive. It's expensive relative to the daily earnings and wages of the population. However, as clinics continue to flourish and be built and grow, the price will come down. And the price of the drugs and the pharmaceuticals are coming down today in India, which is incredibly exciting.
So let's get down to understanding the IVF treatment dynamics from the point of view of the end consumer, that is the patients. A typical cycle of fertility procedure lasts around 1 month to 45 days, costing approximately 1.25 to 1.5 lakh rupees. But with an average success rate of 30 to 35% per cycle, the costs are likely to go up for an aspiring mother before she is successful in conceiving. Fertility treatment, therefore, clearly remains beyond the reach of the poor in India. Some couples who are either undergoing IVF treatment or have succeeded in having a baby through IVF procedures told us this.
I had a previous history of 2 miscarriages, and after that, I tried visiting many of clinics, but I have always got negative reviews that you should not conceive. I was in quite a depressed mode at that time because I was not able to conceive and all. Just one fine day, one of our family friends told us about ART Fertility, and everything was quite smooth. Like in my case, they did a thorough study and I got to know that I had to conceive with a donor egg. From my egg, it was not possible.
What would be the general cost of such a treatment, one cycle?
1.25 yes, sir. FS pinched a bit, but our thing was a donor thing, right? So we had to pay for the सामने वाला person also who was giving us the egg. And they have EMI system as well. So when we opted for the same.
क्या आप कब से ट्रीटमेंट ले रही हो? आप जरा बताएंगे आपका एक्सपीरियंस अभी तक का?
4 साल से ट्रीटमेंट ले रही हूँ. मेरा ये 3rd साइकिल है. 3rd साइकिल में मेरा कंसीव हो चुका था. ये 3 मंथ में वॉशरूम हो गया. 2nd में तो नेगेटिव आ रही है, तो ये 3rd है, इसमें पॉजिटिव है. खर्चा तो मेरा काफी हो चुका है. कैलकुलेट ही नहीं कर पाएंगे कि कितना खर्चा हुआ है. 3 लाख तो साइकिल में गया. उसके बाद मेडिसिन में तो खर्च बहुत गया है. 8-10 मान के चलिए.
So we in overall underwent 2 cycles. One in 2019, which was not successful. One in 2022, which culminated into successful delivery in 2023. We faced prior situation of non-carrying out the whole pregnancies earlier also. So that was one of the challenges. So far as the cost is concerned, the total cost, including our medicines and everything, would be around 2.5 lakhs.
Unfortunately, most group health insurance plans do not cover the cost of this treatment. Plum, an employee health insurance platform, has found that less than 1% of companies in India offer infertility coverage under their group health insurance schemes. Another issue is the lack of quality standards that are universally followed across the industry. Low cost sometimes end up reeking of low quality. And because of that, there is a wide range of difference between the success rates of IVF clinics across the country. Dr. Somesh Mittal, CEO of ART Fertility Clinics, shared this with me.
The success depends on 2-3 factors. One is patient, for sure, most important. Second is the doctor who is going to stimulate and then after that take out the eggs and transfer. Right? So that's a doctor angle. Third is an embryology angle, where how is an embryology lab, protocols, processes, training, and equipments in that lab. That is where your embryos. See, embryos are like one-day cells, Like you can imagine neonatology after a child is born, one-day child. We all have seen, right, in neonatology ICUs.
Right.
How complicated and scary that place is and how delicate that is. Now, in this case, you're talking about one-day cell, which is 9 months before a baby is born. And that cell is being placed in an embryology lab. So embryology lab is nothing but an IC for these embryos. So you can imagine how stringent those norms should be on the temperature and monitoring and everything. If slightest of change in a normal baby when it is born on day one will make the baby to die, if minimal change, of oxygen. Here is an embryo which is just one-day cell. So if it's that stringent, but unfortunately no one sees that, right? So that's where it lies inside the embryo lab, where embryology lab, where no one is going in. But let me tell you, because now we are seeing to acquire something and others, I've seen embryology lab and I get shocked. But when I see it, it's so bad, right? And it's really, really bad. The majority of the labs are like that. And that plays your significant role because your embryos are lying in those labs, right? And those labs are, within the OT, you have a 100 square feet area maximum. In that, the lab starts, ends. There is no protocols and processes of all those infection controls. And, it should be totally segregated area with air changes and all those. Nothing is there. Zero, So lab can be made in 40, 50 lakh also in some places. And I'm surprised to see. But I personally feel basic standard is if you want to really open up a decent enough, you need to spend at least 3 to 4 CR minimum, which is not what is spending. I hear people and I get shocked is how is it possible? I'm trying to understand. People say that they can open up in 65, 70 lakhs. So I get worried, how is it possible? But I think with the results, what we are seeing, maybe it's possible with those. And poor patient does not know, right? Because for them, if someone says they'll put 10,000 rupees less, so the trust factor is so low, they will think, okay, both are same.
From operating like a small cottage industry run by a gynecologist who had a nursing home and was also operating an IVF center on the side, to now having a legal structure, eligibility criteria, and specifications to run a clinic, the Indian IVF industry has come a long way. And regulations have played a role in this. The new landmark ART law is providing hope in streamlining the operating standards across the industry. I spoke to Dr. Nitiz Murdia, co-founder of Indira IVF, the country's largest fertility chain operating 116 clinics. Dr. Murdia is also an expert member of the National ART and Surrogacy Board as formed under the ART Act.
So the ART and the Surrogacy Bill has been passed in the January 2021. Now, in terms of the duties of the National Board, they have the following powers and functions. The first is to advise the central government on the policy matter relating to the ART, which is the assisted reproductive technology. The second is to review and monitor the implementation of the Act, regulations, and rules made, and to recommend to the central government any suitable changes therein. The third being to lay down code of conduct to be observed by a person working at the clinics and banks. So this is one thing which has changed by the ART Act, is that there is now a physical infrastructure, there is a requirement of equipment, and there is a requirement of expert manpower. When you say expert manpower, there is a cap which is put on the gynecologist and the embryologist who can work in a particular center. So now it is not easier for a newcomer who just graduates and can put up a center because there is a requirement of minimum 3 years of experience. The fourth being to oversee the performance of various bodies constituted under the Act and to take appropriate steps to ensure their effective performance. The fifth being to supervise the function of the National Registry and liaison with the state board. So the National Registry is right now not formed, but eventually the National Registry will be formed. And how the data reporting of all these IVF centers or the ART centers need to happen, all the data will go into the National Registry. Right now, we are kind of assuming that so many cycles happen in India, but nobody is clear. Once the National Registry is established, it will generate a huge amount of data in terms of the different types of patients being treated, what are the different problems these patients are facing, what are the kind of treatments, what are the total number of IVF cycles, IUI cycles, what is the success rate of each and every clinic. Everything will be monitored end to end. It's going to be a huge data which is being generated. So now the National Registry has a database of how many people have applied, how many banks are there, how many ART level 1 clinics are there, how many ART level 2 clinics are there, and how many surrogacy clinics are there. And right now, there is a process of inspection and registering these surrogacy clinics, which is going on. Some states have been doing it very efficiently and effectively. Some states, there have been some delay. So it will take a bit of time for all the states to approve the ART clinics, the ART banks, and the surrogacy clinics.
So it will be some time before regulatory oversight covers most pain points faced by the patients and the industry at large. But that aspect has been factored into by those who are investing in the sector right now, based on its growth potential.
The Indian market right now is valued at around 746 million in 2021, and it is expected to reach by around 3 billion in 2030. I mean, people see a lot of potential here. If I compare to the number of cycles that India do per million population of infertile couple and compare it with the other parts of the world, there is a huge difference. And that is why a lot of people are seeing that there is growth. So if I talk about cycles per million infertile couple, UK is 3 times more of India. US, Germany, and Australia will be somewhere around 6 to 16 times of India. China is again 2 times of India, which is cycles per million. If I talk about the penetration of patient availing these services, India, we stand at 2%, which is 5% in China, 7% in UK, 14% in US, and 27 to 37% in Germany and Australia. India has a lot of potential, provided that there are 4 things that we solve. First is the awareness, which is increasing with time, and we have done a lot of effort in increasing the awareness. Second is the accuracy of the treatment, which is the success rate. The success rates in India are at par with the international benchmark now, and all the technology is available. The third being the accessibility, which I think right now we have around 116 clinics in India and we are expanding, and there is other competition who is also expanding. So this thing is increasing. The fourth one, which is the most important one, is the affordability. So if I compare the Western world with the Indian world, the facility, the infrastructure, the technology, and the success rate are almost equivalent to what we have in India compared to even Europe or even US. But when it comes to the cost of the treatment, in India, the overall cost of the treatment is somewhere around $2,500 to $3,000, which the European counterpart will be somewhere around $10,000, and the US counterpart will be somewhere around $25,000. So though India is still much cheaper compared to these Western counterparts, but still the affordability of a lot of middle class and the lower middle class is not being catered. And what we don't have in the Indian system is the insurance which exists in the Western world. WHO has classified infertility as a disease. And once we have insurance being covering this IVF sector, I think the affordability will be taken care of and this market will further expand. So overall, I see a shift in India from an unorganized sector going to a more organized sector. I also see that going forward in the next 5 years, there will be consolidation in the industry. there will be acquisition, there will be M&As which will happen. And with more organized player getting into the market and having more share into the market, I think the overall treatment and the quality of the treatment and the care that we give to the patient is going to increase.
As if this is not sounding promising enough, Mr. Vinesh Gadhia gives a sneak peek into the next big growth trigger to strike the industry over the next few years.
The real empowerment will come after 4-5 years. Now you take the current situation. In infertility, the immediate solution is that get married at 23, 24 and have children at 25, 26. Not happening, right?
No, not at all.
The option is empowering the current generation, especially women. So you go to Europe. We were in partnership with EV Spain, and I used to go for our exchange program training there. Their clinics, 22 clinics in Spain, used to get one patient a day per clinic. Walking inside, I want to freeze my eggs. So now this potential in India is not even started. You will only see some stories in some, page 3 media, but it's not even started. The point is that 5 years later, when we reach from current 250,000 cycle to when we cross 500,000 cycle, from 500,000 to million cycle, the growth will come from fertility preservation. Because the only way to empower current generation, especially women, is to educate that you freeze your eggs just before 30, and then you forget about it. If you freeze your egg when you're 25, 26, 27, it's nothing like it. Because your quality of eggs are really good. Then you forget about it. I mean, you take 10 years, marry late, you have your lifestyle choices, you decide when you want to settle with your Mr. Right. Because your uterus is very healthy at 35. In IVF, what we need is one sperm. That's available even when you're 70.
That's indeed a useful advice for the young women out there wanting to plan their motherhood. It's ironical that for a country that is home to nearly 30 million orphans, it is the IVF demand that is growing in India rather than adoption. Of course, adoption procedures are cumbersome, and today medical science, backed with investments, has made it possible for those facing infertility issues to have their own children. But it's not that the fertility industry does not have issues to contend with. While it is a 3 decades old industry, a comprehensive regulatory structure in the form of a national law came about only in the past couple of years. This delay has led to the emergence of a series of malpractices. We have had IVF clinics facing regulatory clampdowns due to engaging in fetal sex determination, a practice that is banned in India. Then there is the issue of calculations of the IVF treatment success rates. Industry players typically choose chemical or clinical pregnancy to depict a high success rate of their treatments to the extent of 60% or more, even as the most accurate measure of success is the live birth rate. Then there is the issue of failed IVF cycles due to poor quality of embryology services, an aspect that the gullible patients hardly come to know. Such malpractices won't cease overnight, and regulatory scrutiny will have to be quite high in order to curb them. Meanwhile, global players do bring in standardization in terms of protocol and procedures. But the affordability of the treatment still remains a concern. For now, consolidation is being seen as organized players are lapping up the standalone clinics to become bigger. High growth projections, rich valuations, foreign investors, and more patients. The music is clearly on for the Indian fertility industry. The hope is that the patient's interest remains at the center of it all. So that's it for today. This is Kiran Somvanshi from the Economic Times, and you are listening to The Billion Dollar Baby, the booming business of IVF, only on the Morning Brief. A special thank you to our guests Dr. Brian Levine, Vinesh Gadhia, Dr. Somesh Mittal, Dr. Nitiz Murdia, and the parents who spoke to us sharing their accounts. This episode was brought to you by sound editor Indranil Bhattacharjee and producer Vinay Joshi. Executive producers Anupriya Nair, Anirban Chaudhary, and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, do share it on your social media networks. A new episode of the Morning Brief podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Don't miss it. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great day. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.